Hello, and welcome to What's Bubbling at ZIM. I'm inventor Dan Zen, and in this ZIM Bubbling, we're going to take a look at animation series. So let's go to the ZIM site now at ZIMjs.com, and we'll come down here to the docs, click on docs, and we'll take a look for animate, ZIM animate up in the top right hand corner here. This is the animate constant, all in uppercase, and here's the animate function or method. So if we scroll down in the animate, we can see there's an example of the traditional animate, and here is an example of an animation series. So I'm just going to copy this to there, copy, and we'll bring it into some code where we can take a look at it. So here we are in a ZIM fit template you can grab from frame, place in ZIM, and paste in here. Hopefully by now you know where the frame is. If not, look on the site for a frame link. Okay, well, let's take a look and see what this does, and then we'll talk about it. I'm opening it up in a browser. There it is, a circle seems to be going around. Oh, and there comes a box and it does something, and then the circle carries on and goes around. All right, so this is a series of animations. In other words, animations that happen one after another. CreateJS has always been good at that, and it stops. It does that 3 times. CreateJS has always been good at that because you could chain animations one after another. ZIM animate was a nice fast way to do an animation, but it couldn't be chained. So that was an unfortunate thing. And so as ZIM animate grew and became more powerful, it was left with a bit of a weakness in that it didn't chain. So we've now introduced an animation series that accomplishes the same thing as chaining. So let's take a look. Here's the code, and now the idea is, instead of passing in a single object for animation, we pass in an array, and that array can have as many objects as we want, and it will do one animation after another. And the advantage of that is each of those things has to look. There's our rewind in there, and our type of ease, and our time it takes for this step. And there's various calls and stuff like that partway through. So we are using the same system, but just throwing them into an array. Cool, huh? Not only that, but you've got the meta aspect. So you can take this whole series of animation and then apply things to them. Like those are default times, default eases, an ID for all of it. We can loop the whole thing, so it will go once and then loop. We can say how many times to loop, and we can call a function when this whole thing is looped 3 times and done. Neato mosquito, huh? Now note there is no rewind or from parameters in this bit. So the rewind would have been, it's just a little bit complicated to figure out the timing of this, and to go in reverse was just too tricky for my mind. Maybe one day. And same with the from parameters would cause a bit of, I don't know, problems in there. Okay, but you can do rewind and from inside here just fine. Alrighty, let's take a look more at the specifics here. For now, we'll get rid of the rectangle, so we'll just comment that out, and we won't animate that, and we'll talk about that after. So let's just take a look at the basics. We've got our circle made, we're adding it to the stage, we're starting at 400, 300, and then we're chaining on our animate. So this is a single configuration object. Doesn't have to be, but we are doing it that way. We're saying the OBJ, the traditional OBJ would just be say something like, hey, let's do our X or Y or scale, or let's do the alpha or something like that. So that would be our traditional squiggly brackets would come into there, but instead we're using an array. And then we put our configuration objects in again. So that makes a new object there. So in this case, we're animating to position 600. We started at 400, 300. We're animating to position 600 and 300. If we were already at 300, we don't really need the Y there, but just maybe that If we have the X and Y throughout, it makes it a little bit easier to visualize, perhaps. So we're animating the X to 600 and the scale to 2. If we wanted to, we could animate the scale to 0.5. So let's try this now and see if it made a difference. Yeah, there it goes. So as it comes around, the very first one, whoop, there it is. So it just went across and animated it smaller to 0.5. Next in the series, so once it completes this one, the next one in the series will move it down to 500 and scale it back to 1. It will also call a function called partway. Shall we see that? So we refresh here, and oops, I just missed it, F12. There it said partway. There it says partway again. So each time it gets to the end of that partway part, it says partway, and now it says done at the very end. Now, to be able to do that in the past with ZIM, we would make one animate go to here. We would make another animate with a delay. We would say wait and tell it how long to wait. And then as we went through, so we could stack these up, we could have stacked all of these up, but as we went through, we would have to calculate the wait or the delay for each one of these things and keep on adding them up. And that would work fine. It was just a bit of a pain in the neck to do. So now the calculation of how much we have to wait has been taken away, and we just throw it into an array like this. Also short forms, because we can only need to do one animate. All right, so as you can see, once the, well, there's the partway one, and then we're bringing it back, and this time we're making a smaller time, so one of those times is smaller than the other default 1,000 milliseconds. And as well, the other ones were back out, and whereas one's just going to be a quad out. Okay, so we made some specific changes in one of those cases. And then we're going back to the beginning, 400, 300, 400, 300. That all happens, the time keeps adding, and we're looping that whole thing, and we are looping it 3 times, and there's the call for when the whole thing is done. Okay, so what about this rectangle? Well, if we comment that back out, we've got a rectangle there centered on the stage with a scale of 0 to start. And take a look at this one. Inside here, if we want, we could even specify a different target. All these ones by default just get the target of whatever this was put on, the circle. But here we are specifying a different target of the rectangle. We're changing its scale in amount of time. We're rewinding it, but not looping it with that ease. So once this takes 1,000 milliseconds going one way and 1,000 milliseconds going the other way, or in other words, 1 second going one way and 1 second going back, then it will play this last one. So if I save that, we'll take a look here. And here it gets to the third part. It comes in, goes back, and then that one goes up. So once again, an animation series. Now, if you wanted the circle to keep going around at the same time and then have this one come up, you would probably have to make these 2 different animations, with the one being timed to be able to do that. So I don't think there's any way around that. All right, now what else did I want to take a look at? So that's specifying a target. Now you may not like that. You may not like the fact that we've got our circle here and this animate is on the circle and yet one of our targets is rect. You're always welcome to say, hey, end the circle there, and we'll say back here, ZIM.animate. So now we're not specifying a target, but we'd have to go in and at that point specify a target for each one. So this would become target circle, like so, in each of these cases. So here, here, and here would be target circles. So now we're not specifying any target by default. We're just making a ZIM function, and we're going in and specifying a target for each one that is different. That's a little bit more consistent, and it'll end up working in the same way. Okay. We're also able to, with this ID of square, because these circles are moving in a square, we can use one pause, ZIM pause animate. We're using a variable ourselves to find out if something is paused or not, and then we're saying please pause the square, and that will toggle the pausing of the whole thing. So as it goes, I click and it's paused, and I click and it continues. I click, and it's paused. So all of that stuff gets paused, and it continues. Nice, huh? So another thing that has been bubbling is that we've added IDs to animate, and we have now officially supported the pause and stop. So the pause ZIM animate is now a method. It's not only a ZIM function, but we could have, if we wanted, called that on the, well, to tell you what, if we call it on the circle alone, it will pause any ID on the circle. I can't remember, to tell you the truth, if it will pause the rectangle or not. I don't think it does. I think if we put that on the circle, that's probably why we went to, where's the pause? If we put that on the circles, circle.pause ZIM animate paused would only animate animations with the ID of square that are on the circle. If we put them on the ZIM, that's general, and any animations with an ID of square, including, as we'll see, running sprites in an upcoming sprite bubble. We'll take a look at that. We could pause sprites at the same time as well. So that's good. We sort of cracked down on the IDs and made them more officially supported with pause ZIM animate and stop ZIM animate. There's a few other parameters of these types of things as well that you might want to take a look at. Alrighty, that's great. This has been a What's Bubbling at ZIM, and we were talking about the new animation series, which lets you animate things in a series, not to be confused with an animation sequence, which is a little bit of a different thing. That's animating a bunch of things in the same way with a delay to go. This one is an animation series that allow you to animate things in many different ways, one after another. I am Inventor Dan Zen. Have a great day.